We put the recording on. Okay. Now let's see if I can see it. I have it on a tablet on the other side, so I could see if I can see the live stream pop up so that I can actually maybe see if people, not that anybody even knows that I'm doing this yet, so there's not going to be like live comments or anything.
Yeah.
But you are my first ever Deplorable Pinellas episode so that I could practice on how to utilize technology with being old.
Oh, come on. Trust me. There's one, you're not old. Two, I've known a lot older people that have had to deal with technology. It's still funny thinking back for the longest time. My mom, she didn't want to know any kind of technology past the microwave.
I mean, she ain't wrong. All right, so it lets me view the channel. Oh, there's the live. Okay, it says that I'm going live. Cool. All right, so now I can see it as a guest. Okay, so for everybody who's tuning in, you know, all whopping, you know, me and you, welcome.
Give it time, you'll grow.
Welcome to Deplorable Pinellas, episode number 1 with John Carroll. John Carroll is a national director for the Republican Liberty Caucus. He is a political science guru, candidate guru, elections, politics, everything guru. And he is here tonight to kind of talk about what his position is in the Liberty Caucus, what he does in the state of Florida, and how to get involved in your local elections. Because remember, all politics is local.
You want me to just take it away?
Tell us who you are, and then I told you, I kind of gave you a prompt ahead of time of what I wanted to discuss tonight.
I appreciate you letting me be your test dummy.
You're welcome.
I guess more, yeah, either that or you should be thanking me. I don't know which more, but yeah, I mean, it's funny being the fact that you're doing this Deplorable Pinellas, and I'm formerly from living in Pinellas, so great. If this goes well, then they can't come after me. But no, yes, as you know, like, I mean, with the RLC, I mean, I got started with the Pinellas RLC when I lived there in 2018. And, you know, the Republican Liberty Caucus, like you said, starts locally, builds its way up. We have the national board, we have the state board, and we have the local chapters. So I currently serve, I'm back in my old position at the state level as the regional director for Central West Florida. At the national level, I've been the national membership director. I'm supposed to oversee that committee. And then I'm also the Southeast National Regional Director. So Florida, Puerto Rico, Georgia, Alabama, the Carolinas, they all fall under me right now. And I know South Carolina RLC does great work. North Carolina, smaller, but they do great work. Their former chairman is currently a state representative. Shout out to Alan Chester there. And, you know, we've had Alabama in the past. Georgia's a tough one. It's funny, you know, there's the whole thing going on right now with the Republican Assembly in Florida. The Republican Assembly is huge in Georgia, so we don't really get to build too much in Georgia because they do great work there. The RA does. But yeah, so I serve on the national board with that. I help represent the Southeast region at the national level and also hearing everything going on. So, you know, right now we have a big influx of people joining the RLC, whole group of guys that just left the Libertarian Party that have come over to the Republican Party via the RLC, and just the constant growth we got going on. So I know we're gonna have a number of states coming back online just because of that alone, plus the growth in the existing states. For me, you know, trying to figure out the best ways to go, like I don't want to go in too much since, like you say, I can talk. Not long after I joined, I was made communications director for this region, for the Tampa Bay region. And then, you know, was about a year or so later at the national conference, I was made regional director. So my job was to take my region and either enhance the counties where we had chapters, which was 7 counties, and then try to build chapters in the other counties. By the time when I took over, there was only 2 counties. We had Sarasota and Pinellas, and that was it. By the time I was done, we had the last of the 7 counties coming up online. Like they had already had their organizational meeting, had already picked their board. Literally, the only thing left was the state board voting to charter them as an official county chapter. So that's been my main job. And the biggest thing why the RLC exists is because it's been a wing of the Republican Party. The nickname is the conscience of the Republican Party, pushing liberty, freedom, constitutional-minded discussions within Republican politics. At the state level is the big one that people enjoy because we can go up to Tallahassee and do our lobby days, but also, like you said, at the local level. There are some RLCs I've known over the years have been very huge in their local government. Some RLCs take heavy amounts on their city councils. Some of them have gone to the county commission every single month. Lee County, their big thing I know back in the day was not too long ago was the school boards, and working hard on there. So it can be a lot of work with doing all that, being involved. But like you said, it goes back to that concept of government and politics starts locally.
Definitely. And one of the biggest issues that we're finding is that our local people aren't getting involved in their local races, and they're caring so much about who's president, right, and who's Senate and all, and Congress. And then everyone forgets, like, your city council is the one who fixes your potholes and fixes your sewers and upgrades your, infrastructure and hires your teachers.
There's obviously a level of prestige with presidencies, senators, governors, no doubt. Since he's become a senator, I have been able to run into Senator Rick Scott once. I got to meet him a couple times when he was governor running for senator. I was able to meet Governor DeSantis when he was running for governor, and then had a couple of small moments, very small moments here or there since he's been governor. But I've also been lucky to have been appointed by him. My current position is housing commissioner in my county. But while that's all great, and those positions are definitely vital, 2 senators represent the entire state. For every state, 2 of them represent. You have 1 president, you have 1 governor for your state. Like you said, everything is local. I mean, think about this as I make those examples. How many times have you been able to meet your U.S. senator? How many times have you been able to meet your governor, the president? Probably once in your lifetime, and you're doing great compared to most Americans. However, if you live in a city, how easy is it for you to meet one of your council members, your mayor, your county commissioners, your school board? I mean, I'm personally friends with all 5 of my county commissioners. I can reach out to easily 3 of them without a problem. The other 2 is just because very busy on their own personal work life and everything like that, and then having families. So they'll get back to me if need be, no doubt. I'm just saying, like, immediately I can get 3 of them without a problem. When I say immediate, I'll mean within a half hour or so. You get in contact with them without a problem, and you'll have and voice your concerns. Like you said, your roads, your water, your sewer. Was it Kathleen Peters said it best? County commissioner from Pinellas, former state rep. She used to be the mayor of South Pasadena, and she said it to me and a whole bunch of us. The 4 categories of local government, meaning county commission, city council, are sewer, water, infrastructure, roads, public safety. Infrastructure and the roads is one and the same, apologies. But yeah, that's the 4 categories you got to deal with. And if you want your police or your sheriffs to be doing stuff, now the sheriff is elected separately, but your county commission funds them. Your fire department, your roads, your electric grid, all these things you deal with on a daily basis. Yeah, there were huge topics at the federal level, Congress and the president, that go on that we have our views on, that we have personal feelings on, and we care about. The border is a huge issue. The national deficit is a huge issue. Passing certain bills going on. There's certain topics, just not going to get into, that are very huge at the national level. Do they affect you personally on every given day? Now, in places like, say, South Texas, the border has been a huge deal. I mean, so that is a local topic. But you drive your roads every day, or you walk your sidewalk every day. You use your electric grid, your water grid. All these go through every single day, and this is where your city council and your county commission is huge on. If you pay property taxes, guess what? Your school board is important for you, whether you have kids in school or not. Even if you don't, let's say like, oh, well, I rent. Guess what? Your landlord takes a cut of your rent, and that pays the property taxes, which goes to your school board. Those are vital forms of government that you got to deal with on every given day, and you can probably meet with your county commissioner or your city councilman, meet with or meet up or whatever it may be, just have a chance to talk to them, probably weekly, potentially, whether you catch them at the meetings or at some kind of event.
One of things I've been kind of pushing the last couple of years on different campaign trails is that it's not even partisan politics. It's getting the best person for the job to improve your day-to-day life. And if there's people who aren't listening to you, if they're career politicians, if they only care about what is going to get them reelected and whose butt do they have to kiss and ways they have to vote in order to get those, that finances coming into their campaign coffers, these are the people that need to go. And I think after 2020, there was a little bit of a momentum in this country of it's no longer Republican and Democrat. It's kind of the good versus the evil, and picking candidates who aren't here for their careers, because that's not what our forefathers wanted. They wanted a person who was a welder, a blacksmith, a horse, whatever the port. I don't even know this is my public school education. I can't even tell you, back in the 1776, what careers people had. But
I can give you a couple examples quickly. Like you said, you got people like John Hancock, the president of the Continental Congress. He was in the shipping industry. John Adams, our second president, first ever vice president, he was a lawyer, but his main income was he was a farmer. He had a full farm and everything. Even when he became minister to the UK, that's what they called back then before they became ambassadors, Great Britain, they bought a big field, a farm that they called Peacefield, and that's still how he made his money. Presidents didn't get a pension back then, so after he left the presidency, the only way he took care of the family was the farm. Even to his 70s, he was farming. Button Gwinnett, who represented Georgia, was in the farming world. I'm a descendant of Charles Carroll of Carrollton, represented Maryland, and him and his family was in real estate, had a bunch of farming and produce and all that. That was the thing. You did have some lawyers. There was a fair amount of the Continental Congress that did have people that were like lawyers, but they did not come from the political world. A handful of them had some kind of political touch. John Adams had some connections with Boston politics. George Washington, after serving as a colonel in the Virginia militia, was in the House of Burgesses, which we would call a state house now. But they mostly came from everyday walk of life. And they didn't expect career politicians. George Washington did not think the idea that he was not a king. He wanted to have terms, and he chose to term himself out after 2 years. So many members of Congress back then, people, if somebody was in Congress and they lasted 8 years, they were a grandpa in the views of Congress. If you lasted 12 years, then that was astronomical. So yeah, you weren't supposed to make a career in politics. And they didn't think of doing term limits back then because they didn't think anybody would even exhaust to the point of that.
I mean, that's kind of the point, is that you were supposed to be a career, be one of the people. Like, how can you govern the people if you aren't one of the people? So that's why you have these people who they get elected into Congress and then they don't ever leave. I mean, and why should they? I mean, we're not kicking them out. They raise the money. There's somebody who's a nobody like me has like a 1% chance of getting elected to office. I could never run for Congress. I mean, AOC did kind of prove that you could kind of be a nobody, but still there was probably people behind her that got her, elected. But then once you're in, it's like you're in. And how do we get rid of this stagnation? How do we get America first people? And when I say America first, I don't mean Republican or Democrat. I mean people who want to put this country first, that want to make sure that our people are served, and not in a socialistic environment, although I'm sure somebody will totally take out of context what I'm trying to say. But to have a strong country, you're only as strong as your weakest people.
Yeah.
So, we have this in our local budget here at Pinellas, we have a $3.3 billion budget, of which, 458,000 of it is the sheriff. And then, you go down and Public Works is so much smaller of a budget. And a big issue I have with budgets is, and everyone hates Doge and everything, but if you don't use it, you lose it. And I think a government needs to kind of reverse that philosophy of, instead of a department who you can get $4 million, but if you only spend 3 million of it, then we're only going to give you 3 million next year.
Yep.
And then salaries go up, and you might need a piece of equipment you didn't need the year before. So these departments are spending money and they don't need it. And everyone's like, oh, the people died in Texas because Trump cut, 300 or 600 workers from the National Weather Service. And it's like, but did we look at whether or not that budget was being inflated because if they didn't actually need the money, but they spent it on personnel that weren't needed?
I mean, let's think about this very quickly. You mentioned that with the National Weather Service. I'm sorry for cutting you off, but thought you were finishing up, so that's my bad. No, like the National Weather Service. Okay, so let's say they cut the positions. Now, the National Weather Service definitely has a duty. And while there's some frivolous agencies, I'll call it that, at the federal level, that I don't think they need to entirely exist. Shout out to the Bureau of Ocean Energy Management in the Department of Commerce. So that's a great example. Real agency, it's not fake. The National Weather Service has a great job that it's got to do, helping oversee with predicting and how weather's going and storms and all that. I just checked today. We're in hurricane season for Florida. I'm out of state right now, but I was still checking. The NOAA and the National Weather Service are relaying and figuring out how weather's looking right now, if we have any potential storms in the next week. So even if they cut people, they could still do their job and figure out what's going on in say, with Texas, if there's going to be flooding, big rainfall, if there's going to be a hurricane. You could cut down, theoretically, I'm not saying we should, but I'm to this amount, but I'm saying you could cut down the National Weather Service to say 80% of what 80% gone, and it could probably still do a lot of the job. I'm not saying we should do that. I'm not saying it has to be that amount or whichever, but what I'm saying is that they could still do a lot of predictions and have a lot of their people figure this stuff out. Like you said, you have these bloated budgets. I used to work in I won't say which one, but I used to work for a state agency. I know you know that. And you would hear about it near the end of the fiscal year. They were needing to spend the money the last bit because they needed to spend the money. They had already got approved for the new budget, but they needed to spend the money before the end of the fiscal year, or else it's got to go back to the general fund. Now, that sounds like a great thing, but they needed to spend it because then they got the budget for the next year. But now when they go for the following year, so think about it. We have last year's budget. We've already got approved for this year's budget. But if we didn't spend all the money from last year's budget, when we go for next year's budget, it's like, well, wait a minute, you didn't spend all this much, so we're going to knock you down. So they're afraid of doing that. And it becomes that waste you're talking about. And think about this for Pinellas County. Pinellas County, I think, officially has over 1 million people in the county. And you have, we're talking 22 people, essentially, as far as top people, I think, run the county government of Pinellas. 7 county commissioners, 7 school board members, that's 14. You have your 5 elected constitutionals, tax collector, clerk of court, election supervisor, sheriff, property appraiser, you're at 19. You have the county administrator and the superintendent, not elected, but they're the top dogs of the executive branch, 21, and the county attorney, 22. Let's add the county school board attorney. Let's just, for argument's sake, 23 people. 23 people are the top of the echelons, and that's not knocking, say, the public works director or the transportation director. I'm not knocking those guys. But as far as the top echelons, think about it. The county attorney is the county equivalent of the attorney general. So you have 22, 23 people running the county government of Pinellas, a population of over 1 million people. Wyoming, wonderful state. Wyoming has a population of like, we got more in Alaska now. I used to live in Alaska. I think they have like 570,000 people in Wyoming, but a little more than half the population of Pinellas. The state legislature for Wyoming alone, nerd fact that I know this, is 99 members to the state house. And I think their state senate's 48 or 49. So you have right there just under 150 for the House and Senate alone. Then you got the governor, then you got the attorney general, then you got the secretary of state, which makes sense that they have all that. But you have that many running the state of Wyoming, and yet you have 23, I'm calling, if you include the county attorneys, 23 running a county with a population of over 1 million. I mean, you think about that amount, and that's not saying that those positions are not justified. I'm not saying those positions need to have more people, but it shows the weight and the gravity of, the county commissioners and the county school board members in Pinellas, some of them who are friends of mine, and I'm not knocking them, but that shows how important those jobs are. It goes back to your idea that government starts locally. You have access to your county commissioners and your school board members, and you remember, look, my county, much smaller population. It's about 1/5 of the population of Pinellas. And I did the fun fact and took a look. We have a population bigger than 20 nations on the planet. The 20 smallest nations on the planet, my county has more people than. You got Pinellas County. God knows that you probably would add another 10 minimum, because a lot of the nations I'm talking about are small island nations. But you could probably add another 10 nations minimum that Pinellas County has a population bigger than. And yeah, in fact, I'm going to look it up while we're doing this, because now I'm curious.
Oh, well, I'm putting up here the kind of our operational budget, and then like the flow of the people, and the very, very, very top of that, you see it says the citizens. The citizens are the most important people, and I think a lot of our elected officials forget that they are elected by us and they work for us. And we really need to continue on this kind of America First agenda of getting rid of people who do not put the citizens and we the people first. And I don't care what political party they're with. If they're not doing their job, they need to go. So
go on. My apologies. I thought you were done. Go
no,
ahead.
I totally muted myself, so I don't even know if you heard any of that.
I heard you until the last 5 seconds. So
I was going to say that if people aren't if they're not working with the mindset of how can I improve life for my constituents, then they need to go. Because we have certain people who are elected right now in Pinellas County government who follow a pattern of what can get me reelected, whose hands do I need to shake behind the scenes so that I can move money around. Like I give to your PAC, you give to my PAC, I donate to your kickoff fundraiser, and then you endorse my candidate, like we have to stop a lot of the corruption that we have here. And I feel like it starts here on your local level, in your county's Board of County Commissioners, all 60 some of our counties. Like we need to start focusing on fixing the home before we start going up the chain and trying to fix our country as a whole.
So I just pulled it up. So according to Google AI, not a fan of AI, but the population estimation, they says, is just under 966,000. Now, personally, I don't buy that, because the 2020 census had Pinellas at 959,000. I supremely doubt. I know Pinellas is mostly built up. I don't see how they only gained 6,000 to 7,000 people in that time. But for the sake of the argument, let's go with that. by world populations of each nation, if that number is accurate, Pinellas County would rank at number 158th of the 195 nations in the planet that's recognized by the UN, falling just behind Cyprus by a few hundred people. And so think about it, out of 195 UN recognized nations, Pinellas County would fall in at number 158. What nations do they fall in front of? We're talking almost 40 nations, so I called that. Not going to name all of them, but quickly, Fiji. So if you like that water, guess what? Pinellas got a bigger population than the place of that expensive water you buy. Luxembourg, Montenegro, Guyana in South America, Belize, almost more than 2.5 times the population almost of the Bahamas, Iceland. So that's just a couple of quick examples. That's how huge Pinellas County is. So, I mean, again, it goes back to like what you're talking about with government, and keep in mind that it also goes down to the city levels. I mean, what is it? St. Pete's got how many people in it? And I mean, what is it? St. Petersburg alone, in Pinellas County, their population is, and I'm doing this on the spot, so I apologize for taking up time, about 260,000 people. Guess what? They're bigger than my county alone, and that would rank them right under Barbados. They'd be ranked 175, and that's one city. So that just shows how important the City Council of St. Petersburg is, because these guys are running a city, and Pinellas County is running a county more than population of many countries. And these are countries that have armies and navies and Supreme Courts and legislatures. And the county commission is the legislature, and the county administrator and all that is the executive branch of the county. Same thing goes with the city manager at the city level and the city council. That's how important these cities and the counties can be. This is how important these council members and these commissioners and these school board members are. And again, shout out, some of them are good friends of mine. So I'm trying to speak nothing but good, but it shows the gravity of these positions. That's why you and I have been harping for a long time that these positions are vital. But then how many times have you had, and I'm going on a rant now, how many times have you had people, because I've been trying to get people to run for local government for a long time, especially at the city level. How many times have you had people think, oh, the position's not big enough, it's just not that important, this and that, oh, it's not a big deal. And it's like, you live in that city, right? Well, yeah. Then it's important to you. Like we said before, do you use their roads? Do you use the sewer system? Do you use the electric grid? Do you use the water? The city council covers all of that. But yeah, because you want the glitz and glamour of Congress or all these things, like that's the important stuff to people. And yet, going back to it, no one pays attention, which is how you get people that can be problem members of elected government, the city or county level, get in because no one pays attention. Now, in Pinellas' case, everyone pays attention to the county commission. The city level, people are trying to pay attention, but not as much. St. Petersburg, Clearwater, Largo, definitely. People are paying attention. But Oldsmore, where I used to live, not as much attention. They've gotten better. Or, the Big C, the Reddingtons, the Indians, Madeira Beach. Not as many people pay attention, to where you literally have had a city race. I remember a few years back in Madeira Beach was decided by 2 votes. Which sounds close, sounds great. The idea like, okay, people were engaged, and then you realize it was only a couple thousand people, and many more could have voted and didn't.
Well, I plan to hopefully get some of the other Pinellas County elected officials and constitutional officers in on one of my Deplorable Pinellas, podcasts here. But for we can talk about local politics forever. So in the interest of time, I did want to touch on the organization that you are a member of and a national director of, which is the Republican Liberty Caucus, and that conscience of the Republican Party, the anti-establishment, anti-swamp monster, more of a libertarian type view versus the, I guess, quote unquote, conservative view. So I want people to kind of know about the organization, how to join, what would be, I mean, this is national. I have Florida's page up on the screen, but Republican Liberty Caucus is a national organization, and I think that people don't know about it, and people need to know about that there is a voice out there for them, that a like-minded voice.
Yeah, so we've been, Florida is literally the #1 state for the RLC. We've got many chapters all across the state. We've got more chapters coming up and running. Just in the last 6 months alone, our state board has had to charter, how many counties? Probably I think we've done 5 or 6 different new charters just since New Year's, roughly, I'd say. We've had some new chapters. We have one chapter we just got started. What is it called? Minorca or something like that. It's representing parts of Putnam and St. John's and Flagler counties. It's a conglomerate because we have some places that the communities are right on the borders of each other, and it just makes sense to do it like that. Just like the Melrose chapter. The greater Melrose region represents other parts of Putnam and Bradford County and et cetera. So we've got so many chapters going and building and getting up and running. Some chapters have fallen down because, like you said, after 2020, during the shutdowns is how people very much got involved in the local government, you were talking at the very beginning, because everyone saw how important your city council and your county government is just by that alone. Because people could see how it was with the shutdowns and the limitations and this and that. So in our case, we've had a great track record with getting involved and going from there. So, what is it? Right now, we had a record in 2024 when it came to endorsements. Like I saw on the screen earlier, you had on the website for RLCFL, was talking about the race. They just had a special election for the Miami City Commission race. And, so we got an endorsement. The Miami-Dade RLC made an endorsement in that race, and we publicized it because it was a big special election, how big the Miami City government is. We had a record amount of candidates that reached out for endorsement, including incumbents that wanted to be endorsed by us. The amount of people running for Congress, which the state board recommends and the national board endorses, but they heavily require our say on Florida congressional candidates at the national level. They require the recommendation from the state board because they don't know as much. Same thing goes when someone running for state house. We need those local boards to give their recommendations on who's the good candidate if we have multiple. Because I remember one case, we had 3 candidates, if I remember right, in one race that all seeked out our endorsement. So we heavily get involved in all the good work that the RLC does. And keep in mind, the local chapters can do the same thing with their city and county races. I mean, there was one county, heavily got involved in their tax collector and their clerk of court races. Those are big ones over there, and that RLC was heavily involved. I know you guys in Pinellas worked with Pasco when it came to judicial endorsements, and possibly have had to do the same thing with the state attorneys because it's the same circuit as Pasco and Pinellas combined. Hernando, I think we're one of 5 or 6 counties in our circuit. So that's how important these RLCs can be. We have our lobby days that we go up every year to the Capitol, but then chapters can do that all the time at their city council and their county commission meetings and their school board, which, like I said, some of them do. And so we have our endorsements that we get involved in. And like I said, we've become a force that people want to seek out. If they're endorsed by the RLC, that helps very much so. And we've got people like, Bernie Jacques, who represents Central Pinellas County, is a former member of the Republican Liberty Caucus. And, he's been endorsed by us both times now. We've got people like Doug Bankson out in, is it Seminole or part of Orange County he represents? He seeked out our endorsement, and he's always been a good friend to the RLC. Robbie Brackett over out there as well. Same thing. These guys very much become great friends to the RLC because they realize what we have. Joel Rudman, who left the state house now because he tried running for Congress in the special election race, he's got very good ties with the RLC up there in the Panhandle, and was one of our biggest supporters in the 3 years he was in office. So, we have this ability. And keep in mind, we're not, the biggest thing is, and I know you know this, is you need to speak up, you need to do your part, but we do things in a professional manner. There are people who do rabble-rousing and some of the worst ways sometimes, and they don't get anything done because they make themselves look, it's not that they make themselves entirely look bad, they look foolish. There's a lot of smart and proper way of doing it. Not, now, when I say proper, I don't mean like something like, oh, well, you toe the line and this, that. No. What's the saying? Prim, proper, professional. Do it like that. The other saying, fair, firm, and consistent is the other terms I've always heard in life. That's what the RLC does. We show where we stand. We make our point. We come across in a friendly way, and that's how you can get work done. And that's how the RLC, like every year, some of our leaders draft up bills and come up with topics for legislators to look at doing, or legislators sometimes I know have come to the RLC and said, hey, I'm looking at doing this. Where do you guys stand and how can I fine tune it like this or that and all that? And that's happened in the past, So like you're showing on the screen, I don't know if you're going to be relaying to the Constitution Day dinner. That's the biggest event of the year, I'd say, in Florida. And that's ran by Central East Florida. Now it's become an RLC Brevard County because they built the other chapters around it. So it's not just a regional chapter anymore. And that's the other funny thing is you go there, so many elected officials want to be there. So many elected officials want to be at the Constitution Day dinner and be seen with the RLC. One, it's a fun time. I mean, it coincides with our state conference. We have the Constitution Day dinner happens every year, but every 2 years is our state convention, our conference, where we vote on the board and vote on new things for the bylaws. But the dinner itself is the huge thing. And so I'm not even going to name names, but there are elected Republicans who are not friends with the RLC, and they still have attended the Constitution Day dinner because they want to be seen there. One, they'll have a lot of their friends there, other elected officials, ones that they know are friendly with the RLC. They'll have fun like that. Two, it is a fun time. Three, we tend to have great speakers. And four, it's worth its weight in dollars, Like there's a saying worth its weight in gold. I'm saying worth its weight in dollars, in that to be seen at the RLC Constitution Day dinner makes them look friendlier, and it'll help them out with the people that they're talking to, their constituents, be like, oh, well, he goes to these events and everything. There are some people that don't want to show up, but there are those who are smart enough to know that this is the place to be. And it shows that we are I don't want to use the word force to be reckoned with because it sounds a little threatening. I don't mean it like that, but as the saying goes, it's like we are a force and we've done a great work. And we've knocked out the crazy problematic rabble rousers who just make things look bad and show that we're professional and get things done. And that's how we, a few years back, we had some people that did that didn't look the best. And some of them we were able to train, hone the skills, get better. Some of them just had to cut losses, and we've grown. More members, more chapters, and more involvement. And again, people seek out our endorsements, including elected incumbents want the endorsement from the RLC. Is that a good enough rant?
Yeah, and I think that last sentence at the bottom is like the most important part, is that the Republican Liberty Caucus is dedicated to working within the Republican Party to restore the principles of individual liberty, limited government, and free market economics. Like, that is what we stand for. So if you are one of those like disenfranchised, Republicans who, you lean right, but you don't lean that far right, and you're just looking for a home, I think that the RLC is where you should check out to see if this is maybe your home and your voice. We're a great group. We definitely believe in that individual liberty and less government, smaller government. It's one of the principles of the Republican Party, yet we see our own party wanting more government and bigger government and expanding government. And I know we don't see eye to eye on the whole Pinellas County mayor, position, but that to me is an example of trying to grow government in taking a position that is hireable and fireable and making it into elected, so that the person in the position isn't necessarily skilled, but good at getting elected and raising money and having a name. And it just, to me, corresponds with, hey, someone's going to term out in another position somewhere in the state, and where better than to be the county mayor?
So, I mean, I know, like, and you made the innuendo, because yeah, we do have a bit of a disagreement on that topic, and this is my personal opinion on it, and that's only because, keep in mind, the county administrator it's basically the governor of the county. They run the executive branch of the county government. They're the same as the president, who runs the executive branch at the federal level. So that's why I always felt like the idea of, open to the discussion of making it elected, only because of that very same reason. I mean, you have in St. Petersburg, the mayor runs the executive branch of the city government, and they're not a member of the council. The council is separately, same as the mayor of Tampa. So I'm open to the discussion on it only because it gives the people a say, whereas with the county administrator, we don't really get a say on that. You can go out and go to the commission meeting and voice out how you feel, and maybe they can look at firing the person, but most of the time that doesn't happen. The last time I know was, in Brooksville, when they fired the city manager after he accidentally sold the water tower with a bunch of other pieces of property that the city owned. And they said, "Will you resign?" He said no, and they're like, "Okay, you're fired." They voted him out. That's the only thing. So my opinion is I'm open to the discussion because of the fact that at least it's then the people have a say on that. But, your reasons at the same time are valid, that, you could have somebody that terms out. I mean, you see it in county government all the time. You'll have people that are terming out maybe at the state level, and they come back and run for county office, which there's technically nothing wrong with that. And it shows the importance of the county level. Some counties like Pinellas, it's funny, usually people think like, oh, well, you go to city, then you go to county, then you go to state. Pinellas County, again, has got a population almost double that of Wyoming. And so it's the idea is you run for state house and then you can run for county commission. I think, isn't like 3 of your county commissioners former state reps?
Yeah.
Lotville, Peters, and Justice. I don't think there's anyone else. Well, he's a Democrat, but he was a state rep, if I remember right.
Yeah.
If I'm wrong, correct me on that. So that shows how important the county commission is. I mean, there's another county I'm thinking of right now. Representative had, I think they weren't even termed out yet. I think they had one more term. They ran and became elected county election supervisor down in Miami. Representative Garcia, real sweetheart. I got to meet her, very sweetheart, down in Miami. They didn't elect their constitutionals. Miami-Dade kind of had a control for a long time, and the state said, no, you can't do that. And they passed a law codifying saying these constitutionals, per the Constitution, must be elected. She ran for election supervisor. She was only in her first term in the state house, but the election seemed to be going pretty smooth there. So good job on her for that. And hopefully they keep going. Plus, I'm happy because I'm friends with the former state rep turned clerk of the court of Miami-Dade, Juan Barquin, awesome guy, one of the best I ever saw in the house. So you can have it to where somebody will go, but then comes the problem of, do you have term limits? And that's another discussion I won't go into the rant of, but that's the thing is you get termed out in the house, so they could come to county government and there's no term limits. Some counties do. Some cities do. Oldsmore, where I used to live, 2 terms on the city council. That's all you're allowed. You can come back. It's not lifetime, but that's the limit. In a row is 2 terms. So, you can have, if you have somebody go to state and then come back to county and there's term limits, well, they're not going to make the they can try to make a lifetime if the people keep electing them to different positions, which we've had in cases. I mean, there's one congressman I know here in Florida who, with the exception of a 2-year break from state legislature to Congress, has been in office continuously since 1980. And not once did they have to worry about term limits, because when they were in the legislature, there was no term limits. That's how far back they go. Completely different part of the state between you and I. So
yeah,
if anyone's trying to figure out who I'm talking about.
So in our conclusion to wrap up our hour is, are you going to be hosting any candidate trainings in the state? And where would someone go to find out information if they wanted to find out more about just dipping their toes in the water, finding out what it takes to run for office? I mean, 2026, we have a lot of local offices coming up for election, from governor all the way down to city councils. And somebody out here who happens to follow me, on TikTok, I have about 26,000 followers, of which about half are, Floridians. So somebody possibly in Orlando might be watching this and say, I might want to run for city council, or I might want to run for county commission, or the mosquito control. I don't know, something.
Hey, in some counties, that mosquito control pays a lot. Trust me.
If someone wanted to find out more, what kind of, I know there's different leaders. We have like Leadership Pinellas, and there's a couple other groups out in the counties of, just getting training on what it takes to run for office.
Yeah, as a quick thing, just because you mentioned it, the leadership groups like Leadership Pinellas, some places they call them different. Those are good ones to go through. I think the one in my area is ran by the Chamber of Commerce. I'm going to assume a lot the same other parts of the state. Your citizens academies, most cities that have at least built up enough, they'll have a city citizens academy. County level, the sheriff's office in my county has a huge citizens academy. If you're going to run for local office, get into all those, because if your city doesn't have a police department, your sheriff's office is who you guys use. So go through that and understand what they're going to go through. Learn all that. There's other groups like the Leadership Institute and FACL that do some training. Try to find out if they're going to be doing any in the state or in your area. They're usually 1 or 2 days. It's been a minute since I've done those candidate classes. I really enjoyed it. I'd love to do that again, and I can easily do that if we can plan something out and get a number of people in an area that want to do that. Because I've learned a lot of things from elected officials and appointed officials, and I've worked my way up through the appointed route. And I love helping out other people for that, because one, it shows that there's people understand the importance of these positions like you're talking about. And two, it's just kind of like my way of giving back. And it's amazing how some of these races, there's a number of cities where you can file to run and even the incumbent doesn't want to run anymore. So you might just win unopposed. And these city races, if they're smaller, can be very easy. If people want it, they could find me on Facebook. Send me a message like that. I bet some people might reach out to you. Throw you under the bus on that. But hey, you dragged me on your show, so that's what I'm going to do. But yeah, anything I can do to help out. I've got more free time with how things are going. I've been busy a little bit lately, and hurricane season, we'll see what happens. But I'd love to do that and help out. A lot of cities hold their elections in March. Hold their city elections in March, and filing period is anywhere from October to December. In Pinellas County alone, they're all different. Pasco County, just up north, so much simpler. The election's in April, and they have a 1-week filing period in February, and that's it. So they're all the same dates. Pinellas, you have to figure out exactly when your filing period is. But yeah, we can set up and do another candidate class. I've added more stuff over the time and gotten into detail because I learned some tricks of the trade here and there, and some great ways for people to learn how to distinguish themselves out separately. Figure out those key items that can make you stand out. Me, there's certain things I'm known for. I'm dressed good, but I'm dressed pretty plain right now. But there are certain attire that I wear that help me stand out. That's one quick item. I don't look stupid, just different. We can set something up. I definitely will do that. Pinellas County was my base. I did it so many times there. But if somebody in Orlando somewhere else, get enough people, I can do it. I've done it in Pasco. I've done it in Pinellas. I've done it in Hillsborough. Had requests in the past to do it in Brevard. So yeah, if we can fit the schedule in the right way and everything, let's do it. The more we can help train people, it's the better.
And we also have, technology in front of us.
That's a good point. Yeah.
We can always run one of these. I think whatever kind of account I have here, I can have 100 people on. Not that I want 100 people, but we can definitely host a class of like 10 to 15 people, and they could be anywhere in the state if they wanted to kind of learn. Now, obviously pre-register, because we need to do some research on their county or their city to find out when the specifics were for their, because some cities it's like you got to go to the city hall and it's only a certain time, and it's you have to have 50 petitions signed, and other places it's like 25 petitions signed, and
some cities it's no petitions at all. There's one town I can tell you, San Antonio in Pasco County, 6 petitions and a $6 filing fee. The cost of a Subway lunch is all it takes with 6 petitions, and you can count as your own petition.
And I feel like that's the way it should be. It shouldn't cost you a fortune to run for office.
Right. What is it? I think if I remember right, a few years back, 3 towns back to back in Pinellas County. It only if you're only running for city council or commission, it only costs like $36 plus X amount of petitions. It's nothing in some cases. Some of them county government, depending on how big it is, it's a lot of money. But city council, you can easily knock it out.
I think that will be our plan. I mean, the RLC for Pinellas, that's kind of been our focus over the last few years, has been trying to like just churn out quality candidates. So some of our candidates we've gotten over the finish line. Some of our candidates we have not, due to external forces that be, you know, but I look forward to 2026. And a big issue though, you were saying about how there's those March and April elections. When every time a city runs an election, it costs a lot of money.
Yep.
So then they have to run them in March and they have to run them again in November. Wouldn't it save the taxpayers a lot of money and have a better turnout if we did kind of like St. Pete did and Dunedin and moved everything to November? Obviously, presidential primary year, which only happens once every 4 years, is completely different. But wouldn't we have better turnout, especially when we have these referendum questions like in Tarpon Springs, where there's questions on there that are spending taxpayer money for projects that taxpayers might not want, but nobody goes out to those March elections. And then this stuff passes because we have like a 12% turnout for voting.
The former vice mayor of a city in Pasco that I know, he made a point that on average, the city elections only get, of the combined cities in Pasco County, only had a 14% turnout, and that's normal. He had, in his year, it was a 20% turnout, and that was huge. And that was because it was a controversial candidate running for the city council at the time. And so it got out even more, but 14%. You know, you have some people, you know, shout out to our good friend, the mayor of Reddington Beach, David Will. Reddington Beach gets over 50% of the total population to turn out, not just the voter population, the total population, more than 50%. They understand it's a small town, but they understand the importance. But yet, like you said, you'll be lucky to get 12% sometimes to some cities will sound like a big deal, which is still insane. But again, like you said, they will have the referendums during that time. They picked March because that's when they had the presidential primary and wanted it different. And they'll get a huge turnout, those that once every 4 years. The other years it's smaller turnout, and a lot of them kind of like it like that. But it really wouldn't cost much different. They would actually save time. You would save money by having the elections in November potentially, because you're not having to double up and do all the stuff. You're paying just a little extra for the ink and the paper to include the ballot on there. Other than that, you would save money. So, yeah.
I always felt like having those March elections, not to say it was like voter suppression, but I always kind of felt in the background it was like a little bit of voter suppression because people didn't go out. It was only one day. Like in November, we get, at least, you know, we're lucky in here. I know there's patriots who will disagree with me 100% on this. I like the fact that we have early voting because not all of us work jobs where we can get to the polls from 7 to 7 on that second Tuesday. Some of us have children who have events, who have soccer, who have dance, who have all these, not to say that you can't take a little time off to go do your constitutional right to vote, but having that early vote, like I went early, I early voted, I think the last like 3 elections.
Same
because
here.
I was at the courthouse already because I was at a Fort Pinellas meeting and it was right there. And I was like, well, why not? There's no line. Let me vote. Let me get, you know, my vote in. Could you, and then look at the lines that we had. I don't know how Hernando was, but in Pinellas,
No, it gets huge.
we
Trust
had
me.
lines upon lines for this election on early voting day and on election day. Now, could you imagine that amount of people voting on just one day?
Mhm.
It just wouldn't happen. People would stand in line, have to pee, and they'd be like, all right, peace, I'm out. I got to go make dinner. And they wouldn't vote. So I like that we have early voting here. I don't think that we need a March election. I think we could save the money, but again, I'm just lonely old taxpayer who's, according to a certain fire commissioner in Pinellas County, I'm not smart enough to know anything about politics. That people should, that I.
But yet at the same time, like you look at everything you've done, you look at all your stuff. You've done a campaign, you've been involved. Let's go back in time. You were a firefighter, so that field as well. But at the same time, politics was not intended to be a whole different world. The idea of politics was, when they say the sayings like "of the people, by the people, for the people," it's supposed to be the idea that Joe Citizen can go and just get involved and doesn't need to have a law degree to understand everything. Now, I understand some things like, they touch a little bit on Latin because legal uses that, like mens rea or mea culpa. Okay, little touches, but you shouldn't have to need Google Translate to translate the legalese of laws and how government works. Yeah, get a little bit of training and be like, well, you don't know anything about how the sewer systems run, so let me show you on that, and it'll explain that. That's fine. But that's basic stuff. That's not needing to do. You don't need to have a master's degree or a law degree or a doctorate. You shouldn't need all that to be a city council member or a fire commissioner or mosquito control or the water commissioner. The county north of me has a water district with elected commissioners. You shouldn't need a degree to do all that. You should be able to just go in, have a little bit of an understanding if need be, but when you come in, you're also on the outside. So if anything, it's better you're an outsider who doesn't know all this stuff. You come in and then you learn some of the things and then able to say, well, wait a minute, this may work for you guys because you've been doing it like that. Doesn't mean it's the only way. And it goes back to one quick thing, is that humans, we like routine. It's hard to change. So I get that. But Joe Citizen should be able to come in and be able to say, there's a better way of doing that. There's a better way of doing that, and not have to, we have a saying in the military is break it down Barney style, make it the easiest thing possible. You don't need to split an atom to understand politics. And more than the average citizen, no doubt. Now, that's not knocking the average citizen. Most people don't want to understand politics, and good on them. Sometimes I wish I was the same, but it's my drug.
And I definitely wish I could go back to 2019 where I just went and voted, because I'm unincorporated Pinellas. So I'm not voting for a city council. I vote for my district-wide county commission and my District 4 county commission and my Palm Harbor fire district. And that's about it. I actually don't even remember a time where the constitutional officers had opposition.
Yeah.
So a lot of times you just went in to vote on one or two items when you lived in unincorporated.
Yeah, my county, it's actually kind of something now. This last election, the sheriff had an opponent, the property appraiser and the tax collector were both retiring, and the supervisor of elections. Two of those three had primaries for those open seats. The supervisor ended up having none. The clerk of the court was the only one who got elected unopposed, and he does top notch. I mean, he's one of the best I know. But yeah, we actually will have our primaries. But like you said, a lot of the times you won't have a primary for your constitutional officers, and people just won't get involved. I remember a few years back, when a lot of the seats for the constitutionals in Pinellas were up. I remember the races for tax collector. I remember, I think there was a race for the clerk of court. The sheriff might have had somebody, nobody too big. But yeah, you'll have those cases for primaries. Some counties, it's every single election, there'll be primaries.
So in conclusion, join the RLC, come to our Constitution Day dinner. Find out if you want to be a candidate. Find John Carroll on Facebook,
or throwing me under the bus.
Yeah, or find me on social media, and if you're local to Pinellas, you know where to find me anyway. If you're a Democrat, join your local Democratic executive committee. If you're Republican, join your executive committee. Learn the process of everything. Be a representative for your precinct. I am a precinct committee person for my precinct, and I make sure that when, Vince Nowicki was running for county commission, that I walked out my precinct with his information. And I helped out in other precincts, for like Clearwater City Council when that race was happening. Like that's the role we serve. We might not be elected officials and have say in like the everyday life, but being on the executive committee and being a part of Republican Liberty Caucus, we help get the candidates elected, and then we hold them accountable for what they ran on. And when they haven't been doing their jobs, we call them out.
Yeah, that right there, quickly, you mentioned, joining the Republican Party. The RECs are the best place to try to meet the elected officials. I mean, I can think about the last time I went to Pinellas, and at least one of the constitutionals was there. I can think of two mayors that were there, or maybe one was the vice mayor. A couple of city council members. You'll meet a lot of the elected officials, even if they're not your city, get to know them and everything, and it's worth it. And in some of these counties, it's very small. You'll go there and everything, and everyone's very chummy. I mean, I can go. When I first moved back to Hernando and was joining the REC again, it was very easy, and every elected official is approachable and some of the nicest people. So don't be afraid to go and see them and try to talk to them, get to know them, because again, you're one of their constituents, so they want to know you and find out what's the big things for you, what you're doing there at the REC, what you're wanting to do, be involved in, and you'll learn from them and you'll get a better idea. And hey, maybe you'll even have it in you to run. It can be scary and nervous for a bunch of people, but the idea of running, but you could have it in you for that. And people will figure out. That's the other bad thing, is that the more people get to know you, the more likely they'll say you need to run for office as well. I got a friend of mine right now, just rekindled. He's, my best friend from back in the day, and we haven't seen each other in a decade. And he's got people in his area telling him he needs to look at running, and he's very vocal, but he hasn't been involved in the REC. I just showed him all the things. Get involved. Join the RLC. Join your REC. Join any of the Republican clubs. If you're a Democrat, well, do the same thing. I'm not on that side, but do all that. Get involved. And worst case scenario, maybe you get out of it and you're like, I wish I didn't learn all this stuff. But guess what? You're smarter for it. That's the biggest thing, is knowledge and information. Knowledge is the biggest weapon, the biggest tool you will ever have. Anybody you know of that is smart at whatever is because they gained the knowledge in that field, whether it be special forces in the military, whether it be a city council member, whether it's a welder, whether it's a doctor, whether it's a nurse, whether it's the garbage man. If they start talking about things that they understand and you're learning from it, it's because they learned the knowledge of that trade, of that skill. Knowledge is the biggest weapon and tool in the world. And I know I've said that many times over the years and hopped it, and I know you got that, and I know a lot of others understand it, and that's the thing. You could leave this and be like, you know what, I don't want to be part of the party. I don't want to be part of any of the clubs. I don't want to do any of that stuff. You at least learn some things. And that right there, good or bad, getting the knowledge is always the most important thing. It will always be most important. The last thing you want to do is be in the dark on learning something. Maybe you feel more comfortable, but at least now you learn more something. And that right there is the key. That's the key of the RLC.
The parting words of John Carroll, national, what are you?
National Southeast Regional Director is one of the titles. I need to give up some of my hats. I'll tell you this, we're going to our state convention during the Constitution Day dinner, and I'm hoping somebody from our region wants to take the job from me, because I've been doing it long enough. I'd rather other people take the hats from me, and as they get better and progress. But yeah, that's the biggest title I got right now.
Well, the many hats of John Carroll. He sits on a lot of boards. He does a lot of important things. So he got to be my inaugural attendee on Deplorable Pinellas, episode 1 with John Carroll. So
yeah, inaugural scapegoat.
Hey, I need to learn the technology, okay?
Hey, that's fine. I could be a test subject.
And I just realized you're in a hotel room.
Yeah, I'm away right now. I'm doing some training up in Maryland. So yeah, you caught me as I'm vacationing during education. So
All right. Well, it's been a lovely hour in talking about politics in Pinellas, and I did realize that in the beginning of it, I said that the sheriff's budget was 400,000 when I did mean 400 million. I'm sure.
yeah, I
Whoever,
bet we all wish it was 400,000.
I'm pretty sure the sheriff's like with his bonuses and extra goodies, his salary probably closer to 400,000.
Here's one quick piece of info as you close out. One little thing for all the elected officials at the county level for everybody. The sheriff is always the highest paid elected. Always. It doesn't matter if you're Union County, population less than 20,000, or Miami-Dade County, population how many million. The sheriff's always the highest paid. So that's a consistency. You'll see it at every one.
Well, you don't want to fight the law because then the law will win, right? So with that, you have a great evening. Anybody who actually, tuned in or watches this on the replay, thanks for coming to my first episode. I look forward to hosting some other elected officials, and it will be bipartisan. I might be deplorable, but doesn't mean that my guests are. And with that, you all have a great evening. Apparently, I can't leave the call.
So I have to leave first.
Technology.
All right, I'll leave the call first if you need.
No, I think I have to stop recording or something.
Ah.
All right. Well, you all have a great evening. Stop streaming and leave. End call.